A thrilling tale of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She had never been kissed. But during the All Souls Mass, a millionaire looked at her, and in that instant, time stood still. What followed was sin, passion, and a miracle that shook the faith of the entire village. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by this tale. If you enjoy love stories and romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The wind that sweeps through the cobblestone streets of Clearstone carries more than the smell of approaching rain. It carries whispers of forgotten prayers, laments of women who departed without saying goodbye, and the weight of secrets buried for decades in the silent backyards of whitewashed houses. Emily Sullivan knows each of these whispers as well as she knows the cracks in the stones of the century-old church where she spends most of her days. At 26, Emily is an anomaly in the small Virginia town. Not because she's ugly or strange, but exactly the opposite. Her beauty is the kind that makes men lower their eyes when she passes, not out of disrespect, but from an almost religious reverence that no one can explain. Her black hair always tied in a low bun, fair skin that seems never to have known the sun for long, honey-colored eyes that carry an ancient sadness. Everything about her evokes both holiness and sin at the same time. The women of the village say Emily was born marked. Daughter of Hope Sullivan, the most beautiful woman Clearstone had ever seen, who arrived pregnant and alone on a stormy night, seeking shelter at the convent of the Sisters of Divine Mercy. Hope died 3 days after giving birth, under circumstances the elders prefer not to discuss, whispering only that some secrets are too heavy to be carried by the living. Emily grew up among the nuns, learning to embroider, to cook, to care for the church, and especially to restore the sacred images that time and moisture gradually disfigured. Her small, precise hands seemed born for that work. She could restore life to wooden saints eaten away by woodworm, make plaster angels smile again, give new color to the faces of the Virgin Mary that wept tears of peeling paint. But what really made Emily different from the other young women in the village was her chastity, not the chastity imposed by nuns or tradition, but the one she embraced like armor. She had never been kissed, never been touched, never allowed a man to get close enough to awaken anything in her body other than the devotion she felt when working with sacred images. At 16, when Jack Baptist, the son of the store owner, tried to hold her by the waist during the Midsummer Festival, Emily had a reaction that frightened everyone. She didn't scream, didn't struggle. She simply collapsed. She fell to the ground as if she'd been shot, trembling and murmuring prayers in Latin that even she didn't know where she knew from. Jack Baptist never looked at her again. No one else tried. From that day on, Emily made a vow, not official, not publicly declared, but engraved on her soul as if written with a hot iron. She would never yield to desire, never stain the sacred with the profane. Her mother had died because of love. Everyone knew that, even if no one spoke openly about it. Emily would not make the same mistake. The years passed, and Emily became the official restorer for the church. Father Richard, a plump, good-natured man who had arrived in the village 15 years ago, trusted her as if she were his own daughter. She knew every corner of the church, every saint, every relic. She knew where the silver chalices were kept, the hand-embroidered vestments, the mother-of-pearl rosaries that had belonged to the first families of the place. That Sunday in November, the sky was heavy with black clouds that seemed an omen. Emily woke with a strange feeling in her chest, as if something important was about to happen. She put on her black skirt that reached her ankles, her long-sleeved white blouse, and the crocheted shawl that had been her mother's, one of the few things left of her. She tied her hair in the usual bun and went to the church to prepare everything for the All Souls Mass. The All Souls Mass took place every first Sunday of November, a tradition that Father Richard maintained more due to pressure from the faithful than from his own conviction. It was when prayers were said for the dead who had not found rest, for those who had departed without saying goodbye, for those who had left unfinished business in this world. Emily always felt strange on this day, as if her own mother was among these lost souls. She was arranging the flowers on the altar when she heard the sound of a car stopping in front of the church. Expensive cars were uncommon in Clearstone. Most people walked or rode bicycles. The more fortunate had old motorcycles that made a terrible noise. But this sound was different, smooth, powerful, like the purr of a large, well-cared-for animal. Emily continued with her work, but paid attention when she heard footsteps in the nave of the church. Firm, decisive footsteps of someone who was not there out of faith or tradition, but for some specific reason. She turned slowly, still holding a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, and that was when she saw Nathan Blackwood for the first time. He was standing at the entrance of the church, a silhouette cut against the grey light of the cloudy day. Tall, dressed completely in black, expensive suit, shirt open at the collar, an antique crucifix hanging around his neck. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it during a long journey. But it was his eyes that made Emily drop the flowers on the floor. Nathan's eyes were of such an intense blue that they were disturbing. It wasn't the color of the sky or the sea, but something deeper, darker, as if they were made of icy water that reflected all the sorrows of the world. He looked directly at her, and Emily felt as if the ground had moved beneath her feet. She had never felt anything like it. It wasn't fear, it wasn't curiosity, it was something she couldn't name, a sensation that started in her chest and spread throughout her entire body like a wave of heat. Her hands began to tremble. Her breathing became irregular, and for the first time in 10 years, since the episode with Jack Baptist, Emily felt her body react to the presence of a man. Nathan walked slowly down the central aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the church. He didn't take his eyes off Emily, and she couldn't look away. It was as if they were trapped in an invisible dance, a kind of mutual recognition that didn't make sense to either of them. When he came close enough for her to see the small wrinkles around his eyes, the almost imperceptible scars on his hands, Nathan stopped. They stood looking at each other for a moment that seemed to last an eternity. "Are you Emily Sullivan?" he finally asked. His voice was deep, with a slight accent she couldn't identify. Eastern, perhaps, or something similar. "I am," she answered. Surprised she could speak, her voice came out weaker than she would have liked. "My name is Nathan Blackwood. I'm an antiquarian specializing in sacred art. I came looking for you because I heard about your restoration work." Emily frowned. No one outside of Clearstone knew about her work. She only restored pieces for the church itself, had never exhibited her work anywhere. "How did you hear about me?" she asked, forcing herself to keep her voice steady. Nathan hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much of the truth he could tell. "I have contacts in various dioceses. Your name was mentioned as one of the best restorers in the region." It was a lie. Emily knew it was a lie. She had never worked for any diocese other than the parish of Clearstone itself. But there was something about this man's presence that prevented her from confronting him directly. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to maintain the safe distance she always kept with strangers. "I'd like to talk to you about a project. There's an abandoned chapel nearby, St. Jerome's Chapel on the hill. I'd like to finance its complete restoration." Emily knew St. Jerome's Chapel. It was a ruin covered with ivy and moss, abandoned for more than 50 years. They said it had been built by a wealthy family that had moved away from the region after a tragedy. No one had gone up there for decades. "Why?" she asked. "You're not even from here." Nathan smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile laden with sadness and something Emily couldn't identify. "I have my reasons, personal reasons." He took a step closer, and Emily instinctively backed away. But she didn't go far enough. She could still smell him, a mixture of good wood, leather, and something that reminded her of the expensive incense that Father Richard used in special masses. "I decline," she said quickly. "I don't work with outsiders." Nathan tilted his head as if studying her. "May I ask why?" "Because I don't, that's all." He remained silent for a moment, his blue eyes investigating every expression on Emily's face. She felt naked under that gaze, as if he could see through her, as if he knew all her secrets. "Can I at least see the chapel?" he asked. "Maybe change my mind after seeing the state it's in." "Do what you want," Emily replied, more sharply than she intended. "But don't..." Change your mind on my account." Nathan took another step toward her, and this time Emily didn't back away. They stood less than a yard apart, and she could see every detail of his face. The slightly tanned skin, the well-drawn eyebrows, the small scar on his chin, and those eyes that seemed to hold all the sad stories of the world. "You remind me of someone," he said in a low voice, almost a whisper. "Who?" Emily asked, even knowing she shouldn't. "Someone I lost a long time ago." The answer was like a punch to the stomach. Emily felt a sudden pain in her chest, an anguish she couldn't explain. It was as if those words awakened a memory she didn't know she possessed. "I need to go," she said, quickly moving away. "The priest will arrive any moment." "Emily," Nathan called, and the way he said her name made her stop halfway to the sacristy. She turned to look at him. "You don't need to be afraid of me," he said. "I didn't come here to hurt you." "I'm not afraid," she lied. "You are," he replied, and there was a certainty in his voice that irritated her. "But it's not me you're afraid of." "What then?" Nathan smiled again, that sad smile that made Emily want to cry and scream at the same time. "Yourself." Before she could respond, Father Richard entered the church through the side door, breathless and late as always. He stopped abruptly upon seeing Nathan, clearly surprised by the presence of a well-dressed stranger in his church. "Good afternoon," the priest said, adjusting his cassock and trying to compose himself. "Can I help you with something?" "Father Richard," Nathan extended his hand politely. "My name is Nathan Blackwood. I'm an antiquarian specializing in sacred art. I came to talk with Miss Emily about a restoration project." The priest looked from Nathan to Emily, who was still standing in the middle of the nave, clearly disturbed. "What kind of project?" the priest asked, suspicious. "The restoration of St. Jerome's Chapel," Nathan replied. "I'd like to finance the complete restoration of the chapel and all the pieces that are still there." Father Richard's eyes lit up. Money was always welcome in the parish, especially coming from someone who clearly had resources. "What a wonderful idea," he exclaimed. "Emily, don't you think so?" Emily looked at the two men and felt as if she were being pushed toward an abyss. She didn't want to accept the project, didn't want to be near Nathan, but she also couldn't explain why. "I need to think," she finally said. "Of course," Nathan agreed. "I'll be in town for a few days. I'm staying at Mr. Wilson's inn. When you decide, you can find me there." He said goodbye politely to the priest and walked toward the exit. When he reached the door, he turned to Emily one more time. "See you soon, Emily." And he left, leaving only the echo of his footsteps and a strange sensation in the air, as if something important had just begun. Father Richard kept talking about the possibilities of the restoration, about how good it would be to have the chapel functioning again, about the money it could bring to the parish. But Emily wasn't listening. She was thinking about Nathan's blue eyes, the way he had said her name, the strange sensation that still persisted in her chest. When she finally managed to focus on what the priest was saying, she interrupted him. "Father, have you ever heard of the family that built St. Jerome's Chapel?" The priest frowned. "A long time ago, yes. Why? What kind of tragedy happened to them?" "Well, my child, that was more than 50 years ago. Why this curiosity?" "I just want to know." Father Richard sighed and sat down on the first bench in the church. "They say it was a French family that settled here at the end of the 19th century. They had a lot of money, traded in sacred art with Europe. They built the chapel for private use, but also as a kind of warehouse for the pieces they brought from there." "And what happened to them?" "There was a mysterious death. A young woman of the family, very beautiful, they say. They found her dead in the chapel itself, under strange circumstances. After that, the whole family left. They abandoned everything and never came back." Emily felt a chill down her spine. "And the family name?" "I don't remember well. Something French. Blackwood, perhaps. Or Black. I'm not sure." Emily let out a sigh. Blackwood, the same surname as Nathan. "Father, do you think there could be a connection between that family and the man who was here?" Father Richard shrugged. "It's possible. Many families have the same surname. But even if there is, what's the problem?" If he wants to invest in the restoration of the chapel, isn't that what matters? Emily didn't answer. She was thinking about the way Nathan had looked at her, the feeling that he knew her from somewhere, the way he had said she reminded him of someone he had lost. That night, Emily went home earlier than usual. Her house was small and simple, an inheritance from the nuns who had cared for her until she turned 18. It was on a quiet street near the cemetery, and had only 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a kitchen that always smelled of herbs she grew in the backyard. She prepared a chamomile tea and sat in the rocking chair on the porch, watching the stars that were beginning to appear in the clear sky. She tried not to think about Nathan, but it was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those blue eyes, heard that deep voice saying her name. She had never felt like this before. She had never felt this restlessness, this strange heat that ran through her body when she thought of someone. It was as if something inside her had awakened after years of deep sleep, something she didn't know how to control. When she finally went to bed, Emily dreamed of St. Jerome's Chapel. In the dream, she was there alone, restoring an image of Our Lady. But when she raised her eyes, she saw Nathan standing at the entrance of the chapel, watching her in silence. He walked to her slowly, and when he extended his hand to touch her face, Emily woke up startled. She was sweating and her heart was beating so hard she could hear her own pulse. She got out of bed and went to the window, trying to calm down. Outside, the street was empty and silent, but Emily had the strange sensation that someone was watching her. She looked around, scanning the shadows between the trees and houses. She saw nothing, but the sensation persisted. She closed the window and went back to bed, but couldn't sleep anymore. The next day, Emily tried to maintain her normal routine. She woke up early, went to the church, began working on the restoration of an image of St. Joseph that had peeling paint. But she couldn't concentrate. Her hands trembled when she held the brush, and she had to stop several times to avoid ruining the work. Father Richard appeared in the sacristy around 10 in the morning, animated and talkative. "Emily, my child, I thought more about that man from yesterday. I think you should accept his proposal." "Father, I already said I don't want to." "But why? Think of the good it would do for our parish. The restored chapel could attract visitors, maybe even pilgrims. It would be a blessing for Clearston." Emily sighed. She knew the priest was right from a practical standpoint, but there was something about Nathan that frightened her deeply. "I don't trust him," she finally said. "Why?" "He seemed like an educated, respectful man to me, and clearly has resources. I can't explain, it's just a feeling." Father Richard sat in the old sacristy chair and looked at Emily with the paternal expression she had known since childhood. "My child, you're already 26 years old. You can't live your whole life afraid of men. Not all of them are like the one who hurt your mother." Emily stopped painting and looked at the priest. "Do you know who my mother's father was?" "I know some things," he replied carefully, "but they're not things that should be spoken of. Some secrets should die with those who kept them. But if I have the right to know—" "You have the right to live your own life," the priest interrupted her, "without carrying the sins of others." Emily went back to painting, but the priest's words echoed in her mind, carrying the sins of others. Is that what she had done her whole life? Pay for a mistake she hadn't committed? Around lunchtime, Emily decided to go out to buy some things at Mr. Johnson's store. She needed new paint for the restoration and some supplies for home. She was leaving the store when she saw Nathan standing in front of the church, observing the facade as if studying every detail. She hesitated for a moment, thinking about going back by the back street to avoid him. But something made her walk toward him. "Good morning," she said when she got close. Nathan turned, and again Emily felt that strange sensation when looking into his eyes. "Good morning, Emily. I came to take a look at the architecture of the church. It's an impressive construction." "It's more than 200 years old," she replied automatically. "I know that. I read about the history of the town before coming here." "And why did you do that?" Nathan smiled, but didn't answer directly. "Would you show me St. Jerome's Chapel?" he asked. "I'd like to see the state it's in before completely giving up on the idea." Emily looked at him for a long moment. She knew she should say no, that she should walk away and never speak to him again. But there was something in his voice, in his expression, that made her want to say yes. "All right," she finally said, "but just to show you, it doesn't mean I'll accept the project." "Understood." They walked in silence down the main street of Clearstone, passing the low whitewashed houses, the windows with iron bars where old women sat watching who passed by. Emily could feel the curious looks of the residents, the whispered conversations about her walking with a stranger. The trail to St. Jerome's Chapel began at the edge of town after the bridge over the creek. It was a steep climb, covered with tall grass and loose stones. Emily knew the path by heart, but she hadn't gone up there in years. "Do you come here often?" Nathan asked as they climbed. "I used to. When I was a child, the nuns would bring me here sometimes to gather medicinal herbs. And now? Now I don't. There's no reason to." Nathan stopped walking and turned to her. "Are you afraid?" "Afraid of what?" "Of the chapel, of what you might find there." Emily frowned. "Why would I be afraid?" "I don't know. You tell me." They continued climbing in silence. When they reached the top of the hill, Emily felt a strange nostalgia. St. Jerome's Chapel was exactly as she remembered, a small stone construction covered with ivy and moss, with a partially collapsed roof and windows without glass. Nathan approached the entrance and pushed the rotten wooden door. It opened with a loud creak, revealing the dark interior of the chapel. "Aren't you coming?" he asked when he noticed that Emily had stopped at the entrance. "I don't like enclosed spaces," she lied. The truth was that she had felt something strange as soon as the door opened. A familiar smell, a sensation that she had been there before, in circumstances she couldn't remember. Nathan went in alone, and Emily waited outside, observing the trees around the chapel. There was something disturbing about that place, something she couldn't identify. A sensation that important things had happened there, things that changed lives forever. When Nathan came out a few minutes later, his expression was different. Darker, more worried. "Did you find anything?" Emily asked. "Some remnants of old images, pieces of an altar, some things that could be restored." "And is it worth it?" Nathan looked at her with that intensity that made her tremble. "Depends on what you consider worth it." "What do you mean?" "Sometimes we restore things not because they're valuable, but because they need to be restored, because there are stories that need to be told." Emily looked at the chapel, at the moss-covered stones, at the walls that had guarded decades of silence. "What kind of story?" "The story of who built this, the story of who died here, the story of who left and never came back." "And why do these stories matter?" Nathan approached her, and once again Emily felt that strange heat rising through her body. "Because sometimes the past doesn't stay in the past. Sometimes it comes back to seek what it left behind. And what did the past leave behind?" "You." The answer was like lightning. Emily felt her legs weaken and had to lean against the wall of the chapel to avoid falling. "What do you mean by that?" "Your mother worked here, Emily. She restored some of the pieces in this chapel before she died." "That's impossible. My mother died when I was born." "Your mother died 3 days after you were born. She had time to do many things in those 3 days. Emily looked at Nathan with a mixture of fear and anger. "How do you know that?" "Because I have her diaries." The world seemed to spin around Emily. She felt dizzy, nauseous, as if the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. "That's a lie. It's not." "How can you have my mother's diaries?" Nathan hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much he could reveal. "Because the family that built this chapel was my family, Emily, and I came here to find out what happened to my sister." "Your sister?" "My sister died in this chapel, 27 years ago. She was pregnant when she died, and I think you are her daughter." Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Her legs gave way and she fell sitting on the ground, violently trembling. "This can't be true." "It could be, and I need to find out if it is." Nathan knelt beside her, and for the first time since they met, He touched her. It was just a hand on her shoulder, a light and careful touch. But it was enough to make Emily feel as if she were on fire. "Don't touch me," she said, but she didn't move away. "Emily, I know this is difficult to accept." "It's not difficult. It's impossible." "Why?" "Because if you're my brother, then everything I'm feeling is wrong. Everything I'm feeling is a sin." Nathan stopped talking and looked at her with an expression Emily couldn't interpret. "What are you feeling?" Emily raised her eyes to him, and for the first time in her entire life, she was completely honest about what she felt. "I'm feeling things I've never felt before, things that scare me, things that make me want to break every vow I've ever made." Nathan was silent for a long moment, his blue eyes fixed on hers. "Then I need to discover the truth," he finally said, "because I'm feeling the same thing." And at that moment on the top of the hill, with the silent chapel at their backs and the wind carrying the smell of rain, Emily Sullivan knew that her life had just changed forever. Emily couldn't stop trembling. Not even when Nathan helped her down the hill, maintaining a respectful distance, but offering his arm whenever she stumbled on the loose stones of the path. The silence between them was dense, charged with a tension that went far beyond the physical attraction they had admitted to feeling. It was the silence of two people who had just discovered that everything they believed about their own lives might be a lie. When they reached the bridge over the creek, Emily stopped abruptly. The sound of water flowing over the stones always calmed her, but at that moment it seemed just a distant and meaningless noise. She turned to Nathan, who had stopped a few yards behind, respecting her need for space. "I need to see these diaries," she said, her voice coming out firmer than she felt. Nathan nodded, as if he had been expecting this question. "They're in my car. But Emily, I need you to understand that what's written there might be disturbing. More disturbing than discovering that I might be in love with my own brother." The words came out before she could stop herself. Emily put her hand to her mouth, horrified by her own frankness. She had admitted out loud what she didn't dare confess even to herself completely. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, as if her words had caused physical pain. "Emily—" "No," she interrupted him. "Don't say anything. Just show me the diaries." They walked to Nathan's car, a black and elegant sedan that contrasted completely with the simple environment of Clearston. Emily had never seen such a luxurious car up close. The interior smelled of expensive leather and masculine aftershave, a scent that made her stomach turn in a way she couldn't explain. Nathan opened the trunk and took out a brown leather briefcase, old and well-maintained. His hands trembled slightly when he opened the golden clasps. "My father died 5 years ago," he said, without looking at Emily. "When I was organizing his things, I found this hidden in the attic of our house in Boston. He never told me about Isabella, my sister. I only knew of her existence through these diaries." Emily looked at the contents of the briefcase. There were 3 leather-bound notebooks, some yellowed photographs, and an envelope sealed with red wax. But what caught her attention the most was a small silver crucifix, delicate and antique, which she recognized immediately. "That crucifix," she said, extending a trembling hand to touch it. "I've seen it before." "Where?" "I don't know, but I've seen it, I'm sure." Nathan took the crucifix and placed it in the palm of Emily's hand. The metal was cold, but when she touched it, she felt a strange sensation of familiarity, as if that object had been with her before. "This crucifix belonged to my sister Isabella," Nathan explained. "She never went out without it. My father said that when she died, this crucifix disappeared. No one could explain how." Emily closed her fingers around the crucifix, and for a moment she had the sensation that she could hear a female voice singing a lullaby, a sweet and sad voice that made her want to cry. "Can I take the diaries home?" she asked. "I need to read them carefully." "Of course. But Emily, I need you to know that if you really are Isabella's daughter, this changes everything." "I know." "No, you don't know," Nathan said, gently taking her by the shoulders. "If you are my sister's daughter, then everything we're feeling is complicated, but it's not impossible." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" I mean that if you're my sister's daughter, then we're not siblings. We're uncle and niece. It's a complicated situation, but it's not incest. Emily felt such great relief that she almost fell to the ground. She hadn't thought of that. In her mind, if Nathan were part of her family, they would automatically be siblings, but he was right. If she were his sister's daughter, they would be uncle and niece. It was still a complicated situation, but it wasn't the mortal sin she had imagined. Even so, she said, trying to keep a clear head, it's still strange. It is, Nathan agreed, but it's not impossible. They looked at each other for a moment, and Emily could see on his face the same desperate hope she felt growing in her own chest, the hope that maybe, there could be a future for the two of them. I'll read the diaries, she finally said, and then we'll talk. Nathan nodded and closed the briefcase, handing it to Emily. She hugged the briefcase against her chest, feeling the weight of the answers it might contain. Emily, Nathan said when she began to walk away, whatever the truth is, it doesn't change what I feel for you. She stopped but didn't turn around. It should, she replied. It should change everything. But it doesn't. I know, she whispered. I know, and that scares me. Emily walked home carrying the briefcase as if she were carrying a treasure and a curse at the same time. The streets of Clearston seemed different, as if she were seeing them for the first time. The houses, the people, even the familiar smell of home. Cooking that came from open kitchens, everything seemed distant and strange. When she got home, Emily locked the door and closed all the windows. She didn't want to be interrupted. She lit a candle in the living room and opened the briefcase on the small wooden table that had belonged to her adoptive mother, Sister Grace. The first diary was dated 1997. Emily quickly calculated it would be the year she was born. Her hands trembled when she opened the first page and saw the delicate feminine handwriting, March 15, 1997. I arrived in Clearston today. It's a small and quiet place, exactly what I needed. Father Richard received me with kindness, even though I appeared pregnant and without a husband. He didn't ask questions, just offered me shelter in the convent. The nuns are kind, especially Sister Grace. She reminds me of my mother. Emily felt her heart race. Father Richard. He had been lying to her for years. He knew her real mother, knew who she was, and had never told her anything. She continued reading. March 18, 1997. I started working on the restoration of the church images. It's work that calms me, makes me forget everything I left behind. Father Richard was impressed with my ability. He said I have blessed hands. If he knew what these hands had done, he wouldn't say that. Emily frowned. What had her mother done? What kind of sin was she carrying? March 25, 1997. Today I felt the baby kick for the first time. It's a strange sensation, as if there were an entire life growing inside me. I think about Nathan, what he would say if he knew he was going to be an uncle. I think about my father, who will never forgive me for falling in love with a married man. I think about John Peter, who is far away and will never know he has a daughter. Emily stopped reading. John Peter. So her father had a name. And he was American, as Nathan had suggested. But why did Isabella refer to Nathan as a brother? They were siblings, not uncle and niece, as Nathan had said. She continued reading, each page revealing more details about the life of the woman who had given birth to her. Isabella Blackwood was an educated woman, with a degree in art history from Harvard, who had fallen in love with a married archaeologist during an expedition in North Carolina. When she discovered she was pregnant, she fled to the interior of Virginia, looking for a place to have the baby safely. April 1997. Today I discovered St. Jerome's Chapel. It's an extraordinary place, full of pieces that my ancestors brought from France. My great-grandfather, Francis Blackwood, built this chapel at the end of the 19th century. He was a great collector of sacred art and brought many valuable pieces to the United States. When the family returned to France, they left everything here. Now I understand why my father never talked about the United States. There are secrets buried here. Emily felt a chill down her spine. Ancestors. Isabella was talking about her ancestors who were also Nathan's ancestors. They were really siblings, not uncle and niece. April 10th, 1997. I found something terrible in the crypt of the chapel. Documents that prove my great-grandfather was not just an innocent collector. He was involved in something much darker. Buying and selling stolen sacred relics, falsification of historical documents, even profanation of tombs. And worst of all, he killed a priest who discovered his activities. The priest's body is buried in the crypt, along with the documents that incriminate him. Emily let the diary fall on the table. Her family, because now she was sure it was her family, was involved in heinous crimes, murder, profanation, theft. She picked up the second diary, which began a few days before her birth. April 15th, 1997. The pains started today. Sister Grace said it's normal, that the baby can be born at any moment, I'm afraid. Not afraid of childbirth, but afraid of what I'll do afterward. How will I raise a child being who I am? How will I explain to her that her father is a married man who will never know of her existence? How will I tell her that her family is stained with blood? April 17th, 1997. She was born today. She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She has eyes as clear as honey and dark hair like mine. Sister Grace said she's a miracle. I named her Emily, like Saint Emily, patron saint of widows and single mothers. I hope she is strong like the saint. She will need to be. Emily felt tears roll down her face. It was her. That woman was writing about her, about the day she was born, about the first moments of her life. April 18th, 1997. Today I managed to get out of bed for the first time. I went to the chapel with Emily in my arms. I wanted her to see the place where our family lived, where our ancestors built something. Beautiful even though imperfect, but when I got there I saw that someone had moved things, someone had been in the crypt. April 19th, 1997. I discovered who was in the crypt. Father Richard. He found the documents I had hidden. He knows everything. About my great-grandfather, about the dead priest, about the dirty money that built the chapel. He gave me an ultimatum. Either I turn everything over to the authorities, or he will do it himself. He said he cannot allow crimes like these to go unpunished. April 20th, 1997. I made a decision. I will hand over the documents. I will confess everything. My family may have blood on their hands, but I will not allow my daughter to grow up carrying this weight. She will grow up free, clean, knowing nothing of this. Tomorrow I will talk to Father Richard and arrange everything. That was the last entry in the diary. Emily picked up the third notebook, but it was blank. Apparently, Isabella had died before. She could write anything else. Emily leaned back in the chair, trying to process everything she had read. Her biological mother was really Nathan's sister. They were uncle and niece. Her family had committed terrible crimes in the past, and Father Richard knew everything. She looked at the sealed envelope that was still in the briefcase. The red wax seal was still intact. With trembling hands, she broke the seal and opened the envelope. Inside there was a single sheet of paper, written in a different handwriting, more masculine, firmer. To whoever finds this, my name is John Peter Davis. I am an archaeologist and Emily Sullivan's father. I write this letter, hoping that one day my daughter can read it and understand why I was never able to be present in her life. When Isabella told me she was pregnant, I wanted to leave everything to be with her. But my wife was also pregnant, and I couldn't abandon my family. It was the hardest decision of my life, and I regret it every day. If Emily is reading this, I want her to know that I loved her from the moment I knew of her existence. I left enough money for her education in a bank account in Richmond. The information is on the back of this letter. Use this money to build a better life. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Your father, John Peter. Emily turned the page and saw the information for a bank account along with a phone number and an address in Paris. Her father was alive. He had left money for her. He thought about her. She was so absorbed in the reading that she didn't hear the footsteps on the porch. She only realized there was someone in the house when she heard the noise of the front door being forced. Emily quickly stood up, hugging the diaries against her chest. Her first reaction was to run to the bedroom, but she heard voices in the living room. There were at least 2 people, and they were looking for something. "Are you sure it's here?" a male voice asked. "I'm sure," another voice replied. "She's Isabella's daughter. She must have the documents." Emily felt her blood freeze. They knew about Isabella. They were looking for the documents that her mother had hidden. She heard footsteps approaching the bedroom. Without thinking too much, she opened the window and jumped into the backyard. It was dark, but she knew every corner of that house. She ran between the fruit trees, jumped the low fence, and went out onto the back street. Her first instinct was to run to the church, to look for Father Richard. But he knew everything. He had lied to her for years. She couldn't trust him. Then she thought of Nathan. He was staying at Mr. Wilson's inn. He had the right to know that her house had been invaded. He had the right to know that people were looking for his family's documents. Emily ran through the dark streets of Clearston, hugging the diaries and photographs against her chest. Some windows lit up as she passed, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Mr. Wilson's inn was an old house in the center of town, with simple rooms that were rented to the few visitors that Clearstone received. Emily had never been there, but she knew where it was. She knocked on the front door until Mr. Wilson appeared, sleepy and irritated. "Emily, what are you doing here at this hour?" "I need to talk to the guest, Nathan Blackwood. It's urgent." Mr. Wilson looked at her suspiciously, but the expression of panic on her face must have convinced him that it really was urgent. "Room 3, he said. "But girl, what's this story about walking the streets at this hour?" Emily didn't answer. She ran up the stairs and knocked on the door of room 3 with enough force to wake the entire inn. The door opened almost immediately. Nathan was wearing only pajama pants, his hair disheveled, his eyes sleepy. But when he saw Emily at his door, clearly in panic, he became immediately alert. "Emily, what happened?" "They broke into my house," she said, breathless. "They were looking for the documents." Nathan pulled her into the room and closed the door behind her. "What documents?" "The documents about your great-grandfather, about the crimes he committed." Nathan frowned. "What crimes?" Emily opened one of the diaries and showed the page where Isabella talked about Francis Blackwood. "Your great-grandfather was a criminal," she said. "He stole sacred relics, falsified historical documents, and he killed a priest who discovered his activities." Nathan read the page quickly, his expression becoming increasingly somber. "My God," he murmured, "I didn't know any of this." "The priest's body is buried in the crypt of the chapel," Emily continued, "along with the documents that prove all of this." Nathan sat on the bed, running his hands through his hair. "This explains many things," he said. "My father was always very vague about the origins of our fortune. He said the family had made money with commerce, but never went into details." "Nathan, there's more," Emily said, extending John Peter's letter. "My father is alive. He lives in Paris." Nathan read the letter, and when he finished, he looked at Emily with a strange expression. "Are you going to look for him?" "I don't." "No," Emily answered honestly. "I don't know what to do with any of this anymore." Nathan stood up and walked to the window, looking at the dark street. "Who were the men who broke into your house?" "I don't know. I couldn't see them. But they knew about Isabella. They knew I'm her daughter." "That means other people know about the documents," Nathan reflected. "Other people who want to keep them hidden, or who want to use them for something." Nathan turned to her, and Emily saw a new determination in his eyes. "We need to go to the chapel," he said. "We need to find these documents before other people find them. Now, in the middle of the night. Now, before it's too late." Emily looked at him, at this man who had entered her life just 2 days ago and had already changed everything. She knew that going with him to the chapel in the middle of the night was dangerous. She knew that being alone with him was dangerous for completely different reasons. But she also knew she had no choice. If there were documents in the crypt that proved the crimes of the family, she needed to find them. She needed to discover the whole truth about who she was and where she came from. "All right," she said. "Let's go." Nathan grabbed a shirt and put it on quickly. Then he picked up a flashlight and a small shovel that was in the corner of the room. "What's that for?" Emily asked, pointing to the shovel. "If the priest's body is really buried in the crypt, we'll need to dig." Emily felt nauseous. "You want to dig up a corpse?" "I want to find the truth," Nathan replied, "even if it's a terrible truth." They left the inn in silence, avoiding the main streets. Nathan had left his car on a side street and they reached it without being seen. During the journey to the chapel, Emily observed his profile in the dim light of the car's dashboard. There was something different about Nathan since he had read the diaries, a darker determination, an urgency she hadn't seen before, as if discovering the truth about the family had become an obsession. "Nathan," she said, when they were climbing the trail to the chapel, "what if we find things we don't want to find?" "What do you mean?" "What if we discover that our family is even worse than we imagine? What if we discover that we are complicit in crimes we didn't even know existed?" Nathan stopped walking and turned to her. "Emily, I don't care if my great-grandfather was a criminal. I don't care if my entire family was made up of bandits. None of that changes what I feel for you. But it changes who we are." "No," Nathan said, approaching her. "It doesn't change who we are. It only changes who our ancestors were." He extended his hand to her, and Emily took it without hesitation. They continued climbing the trail hand in hand, and despite all the fear and all the uncertainty, Emily felt safer than she had felt in her entire life. When they reached the chapel, Nathan pushed the door, which was open exactly as they had left it earlier. He turned on the flashlight and illuminated the interior of the building. "Where's the crypt?" he asked. "Behind the altar," Emily replied. "There's a stone staircase that goes down." They walked to the destroyed altar, and Nathan illuminated the area behind it. There really was a stone staircase that descended to an underground chamber. The steps were covered with moss and looked slippery. "Are you sure you want to go down there?" Nathan asked. Emily looked at the staircase, at the darkness that extended beyond the reach of the flashlight. All her life she had avoided dark places, enclosed places, places that made her feel claustrophobic, but at that moment she knew she needed to face her fears. "I'm sure," she replied. They carefully descended the stairs, Nathan in front, illuminating the way. The crypt was smaller than Emily had imagined. It was only a few square yards with stone walls and a low ceiling. The air was humid and had a strange smell, as if something had rotted a long time ago. Nathan moved the flashlight slowly, illuminating each corner of the crypt. There was some wooden debris on the floor, pieces of what could have been coffins, and on one of the walls there was a stone slab that seemed to have been removed and put back in place. "There," Emily pointed to the slab. "It looks like someone moved that stone." Nathan approached the slab and ran his hand over the surface. There were signs that it had been removed recently. "I need your help," he said. "This stone is too heavy for me to remove alone." Emily approached, and together they managed to move the slab enough to reveal a small compartment behind it. Nathan illuminated the interior of the compartment with the flashlight. There was a wooden box, small and old, but well preserved, and beneath the box, Emily could see what appeared to be human bones. "My God," she whispered, "it really is a body." Nathan took the box and opened it carefully. Inside was a bundle of yellowed papers, some metal objects, and a small gold cross. "The cross," Emily said, recognizing the object. "It's the cross you were looking for." "It is," Nathan confirmed, taking the cross and examining it in the light of the flashlight. "This cross belonged to my family for generations. My father always said it had been lost when the family returned to France." "But why was it here, with the priest's body?" Nathan began to read the papers, and his expression grew increasingly somber. "Because this cross was proof that my great-grandfather had murdered the priest," he finally said. "The priest had discovered that Francis was stealing sacred relics and selling them to collectors in Europe. When the priest threatened to expose him, Francis killed him. But the priest had hidden evidence, including this cross that he had stolen from Francis during a fight." "And the other papers?" "Bank documents showing illicit transactions, lists of stolen relics, and—" Nathan stopped reading and looked at Emily with a strange expression. And a will. Will? The will of Francis Blackwood. He left everything to his heirs, but with one condition, that his crimes never be revealed. If they were revealed, all the fortune should be donated to the Catholic Church. Emily felt as if the world was spinning around her. That means that if we reveal these documents, you and I will lose the entire family inheritance. We'll be left with nothing. They were silent for a moment, the weight of the discovery falling on them like a stone slab. Nathan, Emily said finally, I don't want dirty money. I don't want an inheritance built on crimes. Neither do I, Nathan replied. But that doesn't solve the problem of the people who broke into your house. They obviously want these documents for some reason. Maybe they're heirs of the family too. Maybe they want to hide the crimes to keep the inheritance. Or maybe they're people who want to use the documents to blackmail us. Emily looked at the bones at the bottom of the compartment, at the remains of the priest who had died trying to do the right thing. We need to reveal everything, she said. We can't let a murder continue to be covered up. Even if it means giving up the inheritance? Especially because of that. Nathan smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, it was a completely happy smile. I was hoping you'd say that. They collected all the documents and the cross and put everything back in the box. Nathan closed the box and hugged it against his chest. Let's get out of here, he said. Early tomorrow morning we'll look for the authorities. They were climbing the crypt stairs when they heard voices up there. Emily recognized one of the voices immediately. It was Father Richard. They're here, the priest was saying. I saw the car on the road. Are you sure they found the documents? Another voice asked. I'm sure. The girl is smart. She must have read her mother's diaries. Emily felt a huge anger grow in her chest. Father Richard, the man she had respected and trusted her entire life, was involved in the conspiracy to hide the family's crimes. Nathan signaled for her to be quiet, and they stopped on the stairs, waiting to see what would happen. And if they don't want to hand over the documents? The other voice asked. They will hand them over, Father Richard replied. They won't have a choice. Emily heard footsteps approaching the crypt, and she knew there was no escape. They were trapped. Nathan turned to her and whispered, Whatever happens, don't let go of this box. These documents are the only chance we have to bring justice. Emily nodded, hugging the box against her chest. She didn't know what was going to happen, but she knew one thing. She wouldn't let the family's crimes remain hidden. She wouldn't allow the dead priest to continue without justice. She wouldn't allow her life to be built on lies. When the figures appeared at the top of the stairs, Emily raised her chin and looked directly into Father Richard's eyes. Good evening, Father, she said, her voice sounding stronger than she felt. I need to talk to you. The flashlight Nathan held flickered against the damp walls of the crypt, creating dancing shadows that made faces appear distorted like masks. Father Richard descended the steps slowly, followed by two men Emily had never seen before. One was tall and thin, with scars on his face that suggested a violent life. The other was shorter, but there was something in his eyes that made her shudder, a coldness she associated with people capable of doing anything for money. Emily, my child, Father Richard said, his voice carrying that paternal tone she had known since childhood, but which now sounded false and manipulative. You shouldn't be here. This place isn't safe for a young woman like you. It isn't safe for anyone, Father, Emily replied, clutching the box with the documents even tighter against her chest. Especially for curious priests, apparently. Father Richard's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly composed himself. I don't know what you're talking about, my child. I came here because I worry about you. When I heard strange men had broken into your house, I was desperate. I thought something terrible might have happened. Something terrible already happened, Nathan said, stepping forward to place himself between Emily and the three men. Over 100 years ago, and you know exactly what we're talking about. The two men accompanying the priest moved slightly, and Emily realized they were positioning themselves to block any escape attempt. She looked around the crypt, searching for another exit, but there was only the staircase they had descended. Father, she said, deciding to try a different approach, I read my mother's diaries. I know you knew Isabella Blackwood. I know she trusted you. Your mother was a wonderful woman, the priest replied, and for the first time his voice sounded genuinely sad. She came here seeking redemption. She wanted to do the right thing. Then why didn't you let her do it? Father Richard sighed deeply, as if he had been carrying an immense weight for years. Because sometimes, my child, doing the right thing can cause more harm than good. Your mother didn't understand the consequences of what she wanted to do. What consequences? Nathan asked. Consequences for whom? For the church, one of the men answered. For important people who could be harmed. Emily looked at the man, who had spoken, the shorter of the two. There was something familiar about his voice, as if she had heard it before. Who are you? She asked. The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. My name is Robert Sanders. I'm, let's say, a problem solver. I work for people who prefer to keep certain information away from public knowledge. You're a criminal, Emily said. I'm a businessman, Robert corrected, and you two possess something my clients want very much. The documents, Nathan said. Among other things. Emily frowned. What other things? The cross, Robert replied. The cross you found is much more valuable than you imagine, not only for its historical value, but because it represents something much greater. Represents what? Nathan asked. It represents power, Father Richard answered. The cross of St. Jerome isn't just an ordinary relic. It's one of 7 sacred crosses that, according to legend, were blessed by Christ himself. Whoever possesses the 7 crosses possesses a power beyond imagination. Emily felt as if she were hearing a fantasy story, but the seriousness on the priest's face made her realize he completely believed what he was saying. That's ridiculous, she said. They're just metal objects. You really think so? Robert asked. Then why did your mother die 3 days after touching that cross? The words were like a punch to Emily's stomach. She looked at Nathan, who was equally shocked. My mother died from childbirth complications, she said. Your mother died because she tried to use the power of the cross to do something she shouldn't have, Robert continued. She tried to resurrect the dead priest. She wanted him to testify about Francis Blackwood's crimes. That's impossible, Nathan said. People can't resurrect the dead. Can't they? Robert smiled again. Then explain why the body of the priest you found is still intact after more than 100 years. Explain why he appears to be merely sleeping. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Intact bodies, sleeping priests. This went far beyond what she had imagined. What do you want? Nathan asked, his voice tense. We want the documents, Robert replied, and we want the cross. In exchange, we'll let you live your lives in peace. And if we refuse, then you'll meet the same fate as Isabella Blackwood. Emily felt anger growing in her chest. These men were threatening to kill her. They were threatening to kill Nathan, and worse, they were suggesting they had killed her mother. You killed my mother, she said, her voice low but filled with fury. Not directly, Father Richard replied, but yes, we were responsible for her death. She wouldn't listen to our warnings. She insisted on meddling with forces she didn't understand. What forces? The forces that protect the church's secrets, Robert said. Forces that have existed for centuries to maintain the balance between the sacred and the profane. Emily looked at Nathan, who was observing the conversation with an increasingly determined expression. She could see he was calculating their options, looking for a way out of this situation. May I see the cross? She suddenly asked. Robert frowned. Why? If it's really as powerful as you say, I want to see it working. Emily, no. Nathan murmured, but she ignored him. I want you to prove to me that my mother died because she meddled with supernatural forces, and not because you killed her. Robert looked at Father Richard, who hesitated for a moment before nodding. Show her, he said. Robert approached the box Emily was holding, but Nathan quickly placed himself between them. Don't touch her, he said. Nathan, it's okay, Emily said. I want to see this. She opened the box and removed the gold cross. It was smaller than she had imagined, but there was something about it that made Emily feel strange, an energy she couldn't explain. "Now what?" she asked. "Now you hold it and ask the dead priest to wake up," Robert said, as if he were talking about something completely normal. Emily looked at the remains at the bottom of the crypt. They really did appear well preserved, as if the person had died days ago, not decades. "This is insane," Nathan said. "Emily, don't do this." "Why?" she asked. "If it doesn't work, we'll prove they're liars. If it works, well, at least we'll know the truth." Emily knelt beside the remains and held the cross firmly. She didn't know what to do, so she simply closed her eyes and whispered, "Father, if you can hear me, please wake up. I need you to tell me the truth about what happened here." For a moment, nothing happened. Emily began to feel ridiculous, kneeling on the floor of a crypt talking to a dead person. But then she felt the cross heat up in her hands. "Emily," Nathan said, his voice tense, "look." Emily opened her eyes and saw that the remains were moving, slightly, as if the person were breathing. She let out a cry and dropped the cross. "My God," she murmured. "Pick up the cross again," Robert ordered. "Finish what you started." Emily looked at Nathan, who was pale, but nodded encouragingly. She picked up the cross again, and this time the sensation was even more intense. "Father," she said, her voice stronger now, "wake up. I need you to tell me about Francis Blackwood." The remains moved more visibly this time, and then, impossible, but real, a weak voice echoed through the crypt. Who calls me?" Emily almost dropped the cross again, but forced herself to remain calm. "My name is Emily. I'm Francis Blackwood's great-granddaughter. I need to know the truth about what happened here." "Francis," the voice said, and there was a deep hatred in it. "That demon, he killed me because I discovered his crime." "What crimes?" "Theft, profanation, murder. He killed innocent people to steal sacred relics, sold them to collectors in Europe, used the money to buy influence in the church." "Who else was involved?" Emily asked. "Many. Many priests, bishops, and important people. They all bought stolen relics from Francis. They all knew they were stolen, but they didn't care." Robert stepped forward. "Enough," he said. "We've heard enough." "No," Emily said. "I want to know more." "The girl," the dead priest's voice continued, "the girl who came here, well, she tried to resurrect me, but she didn't know how to control the power. The cross killed her." "How?" "The power of the cross is dangerous. Those who don't have pure blood cannot control it. The girl had mixed blood, blood of criminals. The power rejected her." Emily felt as if she had been shot. Mixed blood, blood of criminals. She was a descendant of Francis Blackwood, the murderer. The power of the cross had killed her mother because she carried the blood of a criminal. "Emily," Nathan said, approaching her, "drop the cross, now." But Emily couldn't drop it. It was as if the cross was stuck to her hands, and she could feel something happening inside her body, a burning sensation that started in her palms and spread up her arms. "I can't let go," she said, panic growing in her voice. "Force it," Nathan said, trying to pull the cross from her hands. "Don't touch it," Robert shouted. "If two people with impure blood touch the cross at the same time, you'll both die." Nathan stopped immediately. "Then how do I help her?" "You can't," Father Richard said. "She needs to find a way to purify her blood." "How?" "Confession," the priest replied. "She needs to confess all the sins of the family, accept the guilt for the ancestors' crimes, and ask for forgiveness." "That's ridiculous," Nathan said. "She can't be held responsible for crimes committed by people who died 100 years ago." "In the eyes of the cross she can," Robert said. "The cross sees family lineages as a unit. The sins of the fathers pass to the children." Emily felt the burning intensify. It was spreading through her chest now, and she could feel her heart beating irregularly. "All right," she said, her voice strained with pain. "I'll confess." "Emily, no," Nathan protested. "You've done nothing wrong." "It doesn't matter," she replied. "If this is what I need to do to survive, I'll do it." She turned to the dead priest, who was still moving slightly. "Father, I confess the sins of my family. I confess the crimes of Francis Blackwood, the theft, the profanation, the murders. I confess that I carry the blood of a criminal. I ask forgiveness for everything my ancestors did." "It's not enough," the dead priest's voice said. "You need to accept the penance." "What penance?" "You must dedicate your life to correcting the mistakes of your family. You must return all stolen relics to their places of origin. You must use your fortune to help the families of Francis's victims." "I accept," Emily said quickly. The pain was becoming unbearable. "And you must renounce profane love," the priest continued. "You must remain pure and chaste forever." Emily looked at Nathan, who was watching everything with an expression of horror. "No," she said. "That I don't accept." "Then you will die," the priest said. "So be it," Emily replied. "I prefer to die than live without love." The burning intensified even more, and Emily screamed in pain. But then, unexpectedly, Nathan stood beside her and took one of her hands. "If she dies, I die with her," he said. "Nathan, no," Emily protested. "We both have the same blood," he said. "We're both descendants of Francis. If the cross is going to judge us, let it judge us together." The burning stopped suddenly. Emily looked at her hands, which still held the cross, and realized it didn't hurt anymore. The cross was warm, but not hot. "What happened?" she asked. "True love," the dead priest said, and for the first time his voice sounded gentle. "True love purifies the blood, purifies the soul. You two chose love above life. That is enough for redemption." Emily felt tears roll down her face. She looked at Nathan, who was smiling despite the dangerous situation they were in. "Does this mean we're free?" she asked. "It means you won't die because of the cross," the priest replied, "but you still have to face the living." Emily looked at Robert and Father Richard, who were watching everything with expressions of anger and frustration. "You heard everything," she said. "You know the truth about Francis Blackwood. You know he was a criminal. And we also know that you now have control of the cross," Robert said. "That makes you even more dangerous." "We don't want to use the cross for anything," Nathan said. "We just want to reveal the truth about the family's crimes." "That can't happen," Father Richard said. "Too many important people would be harmed. The entire structure of the church could be shaken." "Then the church is built on lies," Emily replied. "Maybe it's time to rebuild it on truth." "You're very naive," Robert said. "You think you can simply reveal these documents and everything will be fine? You have no idea of the power of the people involved in this." "Then explain to us," Nathan said. "Who are these people?" Robert hesitated for a moment, looking at Father Richard as if asking permission. The priest nodded slightly. "Cardinals," Robert said. "Bishops, politicians, businessmen, people who bought stolen relics over the years, and who now occupy important positions. If the truth about Francis Blackwood comes out, they will all be implicated." "And what's the problem?" Emily asked. "If they bought stolen things, they should face the consequences." "The problem is that these people won't allow that to happen," Robert replied. "They have enough power to make you two disappear without a trace." "Then what do you suggest?" Nathan asked. "That you make a deal," Father Richard said. "Hand over the documents and the cross. In exchange, you receive a significant amount of money and can leave. You can live your lives in peace anywhere in the world." Emily looked at Nathan, who was shaking his head negatively. "No," he said. "We won't accept dirty money in exchange for our silence." "Then you will die," Robert said simply. "Maybe," Nathan replied, "but at least we'll die doing the right thing." Emily felt an immense pride grow in her chest. Nathan was willing to die for his principles. He was willing to die for her. "There's a third option," she said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. "What?" Robert asked. "We reveal the documents, but not all at once," Emily explained. "We reveal just enough to force an investigation, and we use the rest as a guarantee that no one will harm us." "Blackmail," Father Richard said. "Justice," Emily corrected. "We don't want money. We just want the truth to be known." Robert and Father Richard exchanged glances. Clearly, they hadn't expected this proposal. "This will never work," Robert finally said. "You're just two people. You don't have the power to face an entire organization." "Maybe not," Nathan said. But we have something you want, and you have something we want. What? You want the documents and the cross. We want to live in peace and bring justice. We can find a middle ground. What middle ground? We reveal the documents, but we protect the names of people who are alive and who could be harmed, Emily suggested. We focus only on the historical crimes, not on the contemporary implications. And the cross? The cross stays with us, Nathan said. But we promise never to use it for anything other than protection. Robert shook his head. My clients will never accept that. Then your clients will have to accept that the whole truth will be revealed, Emily replied, because these are the only options we're offering. Father Richard sighed deeply. I need to talk to the people involved, he said. I need to see if there's a way to make this work. How much time do you need? Nathan asked. A few days, Robert replied. Maybe a week. All right, Emily said, but meanwhile we keep the documents and the cross, and if anything happens to us, everything will be revealed automatically. How? We have lawyers, Nathan lied smoothly. Documents have been left with specific instructions. It was a lie, but Emily realized that Robert and Father Richard believed it. Very well, Robert said. 1 week, but if you try anything during that period, the consequences will be severe. Understood, Nathan replied. The men began to climb the crypt stairs, but Father Richard stopped and turned to Emily. Emily, my child, I hope you understand that everything I did was to protect you. Your mother asked me to take care of you. I promised her you would grow up safe and happy. You lied to me my whole life, Emily replied. That's not protection, it's imprisonment. Sometimes prison is safer than freedom, the priest said sadly. But never more dignified, Emily replied. Father Richard nodded slowly, as if he finally understood something he had tried to ignore for years. You're just like your mother, he said. Stubborn and brave. I hope your courage doesn't kill you like it killed her. Courage didn't kill my mother, Emily replied. Your fear did. After the men left, Emily and Nathan were alone in the crypt. Emily still held the cross, but now it seemed just an ordinary metal object. Is the dead priest still awake? She asked. Nathan knelt beside the remains and observed carefully. I don't think so, he said. He seems to have returned to his previous state. Well, Emily said, at least we got the answers we wanted. Did we? Nathan asked. Because I have even more questions now. Like what? Like, for example, if there really is a secret organization within the church that trades in stolen relics. Emily thought about that. Well, that would explain many things. It would explain why Father Richard was always so vague about certain issues. It would explain why he never wanted to talk about my mother. And it would explain why so many people want these documents, Nathan added. They climbed out of the crypt in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the main level of the chapel, Emily felt relieved to be breathing fresh air again. Nathan, she said as they walked toward the car, do you think we did the right thing? Which part? Negotiating with criminals or resurrecting? Are the dead? Emily laughed, despite the serious situation. Either one. I think we did what we needed to do to survive, Nathan replied. And I think we found a way to bring justice without putting ourselves in unnecessary danger. What about what the dead priest said? About dedicating our lives to correcting the family's mistakes? Nathan stopped walking and turned to her. Emily, what do you want to do? I want to reveal the truth, she replied without hesitation. I want people to know what crimes were committed. I want the stolen relics to be returned to their places of origin, even if it means giving up the family inheritance. Especially because of that, I don't want money that was earned with blood. Nathan smiled and took her hand. Then that's what we'll do. We'll use our week of grace to prepare everything. We'll find honest lawyers, investigative journalists, authorities we can trust. We'll do this right. And after, we'll face the consequences together, Emily looked at the man who had entered her life just a few days ago and had already become the most important person in the world to her. She knew that what they were planning was dangerous. She knew it could cost them their lives. But she also knew It was the right thing to do. Nathan, she said. About what the dead priest said. About true love purifying the blood. What about it? Do you really believe that? Nathan stopped again and looked deeply into her eyes. I believe that true love can purify anything, he replied. It can purify the past, the present, and the future. It can make two people become better than they were alone. And you think that's what's happening with us? I think you made me want to be a better man than I was, Nathan replied. Made me want to fight for justice instead of simply accepting things as they are. Emily felt tears in her eyes. She had never imagined that love could be like this. Not the romantic love from movies, but the love that made two people become braver, stronger, more willing to fight for what is right. I love you, she said, the words coming out before she could stop herself. I love you too, Nathan replied. And I'll love you no matter what happens in the coming days. They kissed there in front of the abandoned chapel where so many secrets had been revealed. It was a different kiss from the first they had shared. It wasn't just passion or desire. It was a promise. It was commitment. It was the decision to face the world together come what may. When they separated, Emily felt stronger than ever. She had spent her whole life afraid of men, afraid of desire, afraid of becoming like her mother. But now she understood that her mother hadn't died because of love. She had died because of truth, and Emily was willing to live for truth, even if it meant dying for it. Let's go, she said. We have a lot of work to do. As they descended the hill toward the car, Emily looked back one last time. St. Jerome's Chapel was silent again, guarding its secrets and its dead, but now she knew that some secrets were too heavy to be kept forever. It was time to free them. It was time to bring justice. It was time to truly live, and she was no longer alone. The week that followed the encounter in the crypt was one of the most intense of Emily's life. She and Nathan had established a base of operations in her house, which now seemed too small to contain all the documents, photographs, and evidence they were collecting. The kitchen table was covered with papers, the living room floor had piles of books about church history, and every corner of the house held some clue about the extent of the conspiracy they were uncovering. Emily had changed. She was no longer the shy, withdrawn woman who spent her days silently restoring sacred images. Now she spoke on the phone with journalists, organized documents like an experienced investigator, and planned strategies with a determination that surprised even Nathan. It was as if discovering the truth about her origin had liberated an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. I made contact with the investigative reporter from the Richmond newspaper, she said, hanging up the phone and making a note in her notebook. She said she had already heard rumors about illegal trading of relics in the region. She wants to meet with us tomorrow. Nathan looked at her over the documents he was examining. In the last few days, he had fallen in love not just with the Emily he had met in the church, but with this new version of her, determined, courageous, brilliant. Seeing her transform into a strong and independent woman was both exciting and terrifying. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked, not for the first time that week. Why do you keep asking that? Emily replied, without stopping writing. Are you afraid? I'm terrified, Nathan admitted, not of dying but of losing you. Not that they'll discover us, but that you'll regret having met me. Emily stopped writing and looked at him. There were dark circles under her eyes, the result of sleepless nights, but there was also a light in her amber eyes that wasn't there a week ago. Nathan, a week ago I was a woman who had never been kissed, who lived in fear of feeling anything for a man. Now I'm planning to expose a centuries-old conspiracy and face people who might kill us. Do you think I would do this for just anyone? You would do it for justice, Nathan replied. You're like that, brave and principled. I am like that now. Emily corrected. I became like this because you showed me I could be. Before you, I was just a woman afraid of her own desires. Now I'm a woman who knows what's worth fighting for. Nathan stood up and walked to her, pulling her into his arms. In the last few days, they had become closer in ways that went beyond the physical. They slept in the same bed, but just holding each other, like two people who had found each other after a lifetime of being lost. There was an intimacy between them that Emily had never imagined possible. "I love you," he said, kissing her forehead. "And I'm afraid that when this is all over, you'll realize you don't need me anymore." "Idiot," Emily murmured against his chest. "You think I fell in love with you because I was vulnerable? You think my feelings are just a reaction to stress?" "I don't know," Nathan replied honestly. "I've never fallen in love with someone under normal circumstances. I don't know how this works." Emily moved away from him and looked at him with an expression that was both affectionate and exasperated. "Then, let me explain," she said. "I didn't fall in love with you because you saved me, or because you helped me discover the truth about my family. I fell in love with you because the moment we met, I saw in your eyes the same emptiness I felt in my chest. I fell in love because you're the only person who looks at me as if I were complete, not as if I were a saint or a sinner." "Emily—" "I'm not finished," she interrupted him. "I fell in love because you chose to stay with me in the crypt, even knowing you could die. Because you're willing to give up a fortune to do the right thing. Because you make me want to be better than I was." Nathan kissed her, and for the first time in days, Emily allowed herself to forget about the documents, the conspiracies, the dangers that awaited them. There were just the two of them, in the middle of the messy living room, loving each other with the intensity of people who knew that time was precious. The kiss deepened, and Emily felt desire grow in her body in a way she had never experienced. It wasn't just physical attraction, but a deep need to connect with Nathan in every possible way. Her hands explored his back, feeling the tense muscles beneath his shirt, and she realized she was no longer afraid. "Emily," Nathan murmured against her lips. "Are you sure?" "Sure of what?" "That you want this. That you're ready." Emily looked into his eyes and saw the same vulnerability she felt. They weren't just two adults giving in to desire. They were two people who had found in each other the completeness they had been searching for their entire lives. "I waited 26 years for the right man," she said. "I'm not going to wait any longer." They made love right there, in the living room of the small house, surrounded by documents that told the dark story of their families. It was painful and beautiful, urgent and tender, like two people who were giving themselves completely to each other, knowing that tomorrow was uncertain. Afterward, lying on the floor on the blankets Nathan had brought from the bedroom, Emily felt different. Not just because she had lost her virginity, but because she finally understood what her mother had felt. She understood why Isabella had risked everything for love. She understood why some things were worth more than life. "Any regrets?" Nathan asked, caressing her hair. "None," Emily replied. "And you?" "Just one." "What?" "Not having found you 10 years ago. Not having had more time with you." "We wouldn't have met 10 years ago," Emily said. 10 years ago, I was still trapped. In my own fear. I needed to go through all of this to become the woman you could love." They stayed like that for hours, talking about the future, about what they would do when this whole situation was over. Nathan talked about Paris, about the possibility of Emily meeting her biological father. Emily talked about continuing the restoration work, but now with the goal of returning the relics to their places of origin. But their plans were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was almost midnight, too late for social visits. "Wait here," Nathan said, quickly putting on his clothes. "No," Emily replied, also getting dressed. "We're not going to separate." They approached the door carefully. Nathan peeked through the curtain of the window and saw a female figure on the porch. "It's a woman," he whispered. "Alone. Doesn't look dangerous." Nathan opened the door, keeping the security chain in place. On the other side was a woman of about 50, elegantly dressed but with an expression of urgency on her face. "Are you Emily Sullivan and Nathan Blackwood?" she asked. "Who wants to know?" Nathan replied. "My name is Dr. Martha Anderson. I'm a lawyer. I need to talk to you about the documents you found." Emily and Nathan exchanged glances. They hadn't spoken with any lawyer named Martha. How did you know we're here? Emily asked. Because I represent someone who has great interest in what you discovered, Martha replied. Someone who can help you. Who? John Peter Davis, your father, Emily. Emily felt as if she had been punched. Her father, the man she had discovered was alive just a few days ago, the man who had abandoned her pregnant mother. How did he know I exist? She asked. Because he always knew, Martha replied, and because he has been looking for you for years. Nathan undid the chain and opened the door completely. Come in, he said. But if this is a trap, it's not, Martha assured. On the contrary, John Peter is offering protection. The lawyer entered the house and looked around, seeing the documents scattered everywhere. You really found everything, she said, impressed. John Peter will be happy. Where is he? Emily asked. In Richmond. He arrived in the United States 3 days ago as soon as he knew you had discovered the documents. How did he know? Because he has people monitoring any activity related to the Blackwood family for years. When you started asking questions, investigating, he was notified. Emily sat in the kitchen chair trying to process the information. He never tried to find me before. He tried, Martha replied, but the people who want to keep the documents, Secret made sure to keep him away. They threatened to hurt you if he tried to make contact. And now the situation has changed. You found the documents, resurrected the scandal. There's no more reason to keep you apart. Nathan approached Emily and put his hand on her shoulder. What does John Peter want? He asked. He wants to meet his daughter, Martha replied, and he wants to help you expose the truth about Francis Blackwood and the corruption network that exists to this day. What corruption network? Martha opened her briefcase and took out a folder full of documents. The network that John Peter has been investigating for more than 20 years. The network that killed Isabella when she tried to expose the truth. Emily felt a chill down her spine. You know who killed my mother? We know, Martha replied, and we have proof, but we need your help to expose everything. What kind of help? We need you to come to Richmond. We need Emily to meet with John Peter and for both of you to testify about what you discovered in the crypt. Nathan frowned. Testify to whom? To the FBI, to the Department of Justice, to the authorities who can really do something. And what about the people who threatened us? Emily asked. What about the 1-week deadline? John Peter has protection, Martha replied. He has been working with the French authorities for years. You'll be safe. Emily looked at Nathan, who was clearly divided. I don't know, he said. It seems too risky. Riskier than staying here waiting for Robert and his clients to decide what to do with us? Emily asked. At least here we know the terrain. Nathan, this could be our only chance to really bring justice, Emily said, and my only chance to meet my father. Martha leaned forward. I can show you something, she said, taking a photograph from the folder. This is a photo of John Peter with Isabella, taken shortly before Emily was born. Emily took the photograph with trembling hands. In the image was a man of about 40, tall and thin, with light eyes and brown hair. He was embracing a beautiful woman with black hair and honey-colored eyes. The woman was visibly pregnant. My mother, Emily murmured. She was really beautiful. And your father really loved her, Martha added. He never married anyone else, never had other children. He spent his entire life looking for you. Then why didn't he come before? Emily asked, with a hint of anger in her voice. Because, as I said, they threatened to hurt you, and John Peter couldn't risk losing the only thing that remained of Isabella. Emily looked at Nathan, who was studying the photograph. There's something familiar about this man, he said. I have the feeling I've seen him before. He's been in Clearstone several times over the years, Martha explained. Always in disguise, always from a distance. He watched you grow up, Emily. Made sure you were okay. He watched me, Emily felt, both invaded and comforted at the same time. Discreetly. He knew when you made your first communion. He knew when you started working on restoring the images. He knew when Jack Baptist tried to approach you. He knew about that? He knew everything. And he suffered from not being able to be present in any important moment of your life. Emily felt tears in her eyes. All her life she had felt abandoned, rejected by the father she never knew. Discovering that he had been present in some way changed everything. "All right," she finally said. "I'll meet him." "Emily, are you—" "Sure," Nathan asked. "I am, but only if you come with me." Nathan sighed. "You know I'll go wherever you go." "Great," Martha said, putting away the documents. "We'll leave in the morning. John Peter is eager to meet you." After the lawyer left, Emily and Nathan spent the rest of the night packing the most important documents. They knew that leaving Clearstone was a risk, but they also knew that staying could be even more dangerous. "Are you nervous?" Nathan asked as they were putting away the last things. "Terrified," Emily admitted. "I'm going to meet the man who gave me life but was never present in it. I'm going to find out if he really loves me or if he just feels guilty. And if it's just guilt, then at least I'll know the truth and I'll be able to forgive him or not based on facts, not imagination." Nathan hugged her from behind, kissing her neck. "I'll be there," he murmured, "no matter what happens." "I know," Emily replied, "and that makes all the difference." The next morning they left Clearstone in Martha's car, a black SUV with tinted windows. Emily looked back one last time, watching the village where she had spent her entire life grow smaller and smaller. Part of her was sad to leave the only place she knew. Another part was excited about the possibility of finally knowing the world beyond the mountains. The trip to Richmond lasted 3 hours, during which Martha told more details about John Peter and the investigation he had conducted over the years. Emily learned that her father was a rich and respected man in France who had used his fortune and influence to investigate the corruption network related to the relic trade. He discovered that the network extended far beyond the original crimes. "So Francis Blackwood," Martha explained. "There were priests, bishops, politicians, and businessmen involved, people who bought and sold sacred relics as if they were commodities." "And it still exists today?" Nathan asked. "Stronger than ever. The religious antiquities market moves billions of dollars a year. Most of it is legal, but there's a significant portion that isn't. And John Peter wants to expose all of this." "He wants revenge," Martha replied honestly. "He wants the people who killed Isabella to pay for what they did." Emily looked out the window, watching the mountains of Virginia pass by. Revenge. She understood the desire for revenge, but she also knew there was something more important at stake. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want justice." "Sometimes they're the same thing," Martha replied, "and sometimes they're not." When they arrived in Richmond, Emily was impressed by the size of the city. It was larger than she had imagined, with tall buildings and busy streets that made her feel small and insignificant. Martha took them to a hotel in the center of the city, an elegant place where Emily had never imagined she could stay. "John Peter is waiting upstairs," Martha said when they entered the lobby. "He's nervous, very nervous." "So am I," Emily admitted. "Do you want me to stay with you?" Nathan asked. "No," Emily replied. "I think I need to meet him alone first." They took the elevator to the 10th floor, where Martha stopped in front of a door and knocked softly. "John Peter," she said. "She's here." The door opened, and Emily saw the man from the photograph, just 27 years older. He was tall and thin, with grey hair and clear blue eyes that were exactly like hers. When he saw her, he began to cry. "Emily," he said, his voice broken with emotion. "My daughter." Emily looked at him for a long moment, trying to process the fact that this man was her father. He seemed fragile, vulnerable, as if he had carried an enormous weight his entire life. "Hello," she finally said, not knowing what else to say. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," John Peter said. "You're just like your mother." "From what I heard, you loved my mother," Emily said, deciding to get straight to the point. "I did," John Peter replied, "more than my own life." "Then why did you abandon her?" The question was harsh, but Emily needed to know. John Peter closed his eyes for a moment, as if preparing for a confession he had rehearsed 1,000 times. "Because I was a coward," he replied. "Because I was afraid to leave my wife, afraid to face the scandal, afraid to risk my career. I thought I could keep the two lives separate. that I could take care of both of them from a distance. And when did you discover that was impossible? When I discovered that Isabella had died, when I discovered that I had lost everything that really mattered. Emily felt tears in her eyes, but not of sadness, of anger. You abandoned my mother, pregnant and alone. She died trying to do the right thing, trying to correct the family's mistakes, and you stayed in France comfortable and safe while she suffered. I know, John Peter said, and I carried that guilt every day of my life. Guilt doesn't bring anyone back, Emily replied. Guilt doesn't raise a daughter. No, it doesn't, John Peter agreed. But love does. And I always loved you, Emily. Even from a distance, even without being able to show it. Emily looked at the man who had given origin to her life, but who hadn't been present to live it. She felt anger, sadness, disappointment, but she also felt a strange sense of completeness, as if a part of herself that was missing had finally fallen into place. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said honestly. I don't expect you to, John Peter replied. I only hope you'll give me the chance to try to make up for the lost years. How can I? By helping you bring justice, by helping you expose the truth about who killed your mother and why. Emily looked at Nathan, who had remained silent throughout the conversation. And if I don't want your help? Then I'll leave, John, Peter said, and I won't bother you again. Emily thought about this. Part of her wanted to send him away, wanted to punish him for all the years of abandonment. But another part of her, the part that had learned to fight for justice, knew she needed all the help she could get. All right, she finally said, you can help. But that doesn't mean I forgive you. And it doesn't mean we're going to have a father-daughter relationship. I understand, John Peter replied. Thank you. Emily nodded and turned to Nathan. Now let's find out who killed my mother, she said. And we'll make them pay for what they did. The search for truth was just beginning, and Emily knew that before it ended, many more secrets would come to light. Secrets that could destroy everything she thought she knew about her life, her family, and the world around her. But she was ready. Finally, she was ready to face any truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, Emily woke in the hotel room with a strange sensation that something had changed during the night. It wasn't just the fact of being in a big city, far from Clearston, or of having met her biological father. It was something deeper, as if the pieces of a complex puzzle were finally falling into place. Nathan still slept beside her, his protective arm around her waist. In the last few days, he had become more than her lover. He was her partner, her confidant, her anchor in the midst of the chaos their lives had become. Emily observed his face relaxed in sleep, the lines of tension softened, and felt a wave of tenderness that almost made her cry. A noise in the hallway made her alert, quick footsteps, muffled voices. Emily carefully got up, without waking Nathan, and approached the door. Through the peephole, she saw John Peter talking intensely, with two men in suits whom she didn't recognize. Nathan, she whispered, gently shaking him. Wake up. He opened his eyes immediately, already in a state of alert. What is it? My father is in the hallway with two people. It looks serious. Nathan quickly got up and dressed. Emily did the same, and together they approached the door. The voices grew louder, more urgent. We can't wait any longer, one of the men was saying. They know you're here. How do they know? John Peter asked, his voice tense. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that you have maybe an hour before they get here. Emily felt her blood freeze. She abruptly opened the door, surprising the three men. Who knows we're here? She asked. John Peter turned to her, his face pale. Emily, these are FBI agents. They came to warn us that our location has been discovered. Discovered by whom? By the same people who killed your mother. One of the agents replied, by the group that has kept Francis Blackwood's crimes secret for decades. Nathan appeared beside Emily, clearly tense. What group exactly? He asked. An organization that operates inside and outside the Catholic Church, the second agent explained. They call themselves the Guardians of Faith, but they're essentially a criminal organization that trades sacred relics on the black market. And they killed my mother. Yes, John Peter replied, his voice laden with pain. Because she discovered they weren't just traders. She discovered they used the relics for obscure rituals to gain power over influential people. Emily felt as if the world was spinning. Obscure rituals, power over influential people. This went far beyond what she had imagined. What kind of rituals, she asked. Blackmail, the first agent replied. They convinced important people to participate in ceremonies with stolen relics. Then they used evidence of these participations to control these people. Like blackmail? Imagine a politician or a businessman being photographed or filmed, participating in a ritual with relics that were knowingly stolen from churches. Imagine a bishop being caught in a ceremony that mixes Christian elements with occultist practices. These people would be completely compromised. Nathan ran his hand through his hair, processing the information. And my family, Francis Blackwood, was involved in this? Francis was the original supplier, Johnny, Peter replied. He stole the relics but didn't participate in the rituals. That started after his death when other people took control of the operation. Who took control? People you know, the second agent said. People who have been in Clearstone for decades. Emily felt a chill down her spine. Who? Father Richard is just a pawn, John Peter explained. The real leader is someone you would never suspect. Who? Emily insisted. Sister Grace. Emily felt as if she had been shot. Sister Grace, the woman who had raised her, who had been like a mother to her, who had taken care of her throughout her childhood. That's impossible, she murmured. It's not, John Peter said sadly. Grace has been the leader of the Guardians of Faith for more than 30 years. She was the one who ordered Isabella's death when your mother threatened to expose the operation. But why? Emily asked, tears beginning to fall down her face. Why did she raise me if she killed my mother? Because you were useful, the first agent replied. You were an orphan child without family, completely dependent on them. They raised you to be a tool. What kind of tool? A restorer of relics, John Peter explained. Someone who could authenticate stolen pieces, who could make them appear legitimate. Someone no one would suspect. Emily leaned against the wall, feeling her legs failing. Her entire life had been a lie. All her education, all her work, everything had been planned to make her a piece in the criminal operation. That's why she never let me leave Clearstone, she murmured. That's why she always discouraged me from having relationships. Exactly, Nathan said, embracing her. She wanted to keep you isolated, controlled. But something went wrong, the second agent continued. When Nathan arrived and you began to question things, when you found the documents, Grace realized she was losing control. And now? Now she's coming to Richmond with a group of armed people, John Peter replied. She wants to eliminate you two and everyone who knows the truth. Emily wiped away her tears and looked at Nathan, who was observing her with an expression of concern and love. What do we do? She asked. We stop her, Nathan replied. We expose everything and stop her once and for all. How? We confront. Her, the first agent said, but not alone. We have a trap prepared. What kind of trap? We're going to make her think you've agreed to make a deal. We'll arrange a meeting in a controlled place where we can arrest her and all her accomplices. Emily looked at John Peter. And you? Will you participate in this? I will do whatever is necessary to avenge your mother, he replied, and to protect you. All right, Emily said, feeling a new determination grow in her chest. Let's do this. In the next 2 hours, they planned the operation. The meeting would be set for that afternoon in an abandoned church on the outskirts of Richmond. Emily and Nathan would pretend they wanted to make a deal to hand over the documents in exchange for protection. Meanwhile, the FBI would be positioned around the church, ready to act. Are you sure you want to do this? John Peter asked when they were preparing to leave. It's very dangerous. I'm sure, Emily replied. Sister Grace killed my mother. She lied to me my entire life. She used me as a tool. It's time for her to pay for that. And I'll be by her side, Nathan added, no matter what happens. John Peter nodded, but Emily could see the concern in his eyes. She approached him and for the first time touched his face affectionately. "I still don't know if I can forgive you," she said, "but I know you're trying to do the right thing now." "It's all I can do," John Peter replied. "Try to make up for the mistakes of the past." The abandoned church was in an industrial area of Richmond, surrounded by empty warehouses and vacant lots. It was a perfect place for a secret meeting, but also a perfect place for an ambush. Emily and Nathan arrived first, accompanied by 2 undercover officers. "Remember," one of the officers said, "you use the hidden microphones to record everything. When I give the signal, you duck and we take action." "Understood," Emily replied, checking the small microphone attached to her blouse. "And if something goes wrong?" Nathan asked. "It won't go wrong," the officer assured. "We have everything under control." Emily wasn't so confident. She had known Sister Grace her entire life, knew she was an intelligent and careful woman. It would be unlikely for her to fall into such an obvious trap. When they entered the church, Emily felt a strange familiarity. The place reminded her of St. Jerome's Chapel, with its stone walls and broken stained glass windows. But there was something more sinister here, something that made Emily feel watched. "They're late," Nathan murmured, looking at his watch. "Sister Grace is always punctual," Emily replied. "If she's late, it's because she suspects something." As if she had heard her words, a familiar voice echoed through the church. "Emily, my child, you were always very intelligent." Emily turned and saw Sister Grace, standing at the entrance of the church. She looked exactly as always, a small and apparently fragile woman, dressed in the habit of the Sisters of Divine Mercy. But there was something different in her eyes, a coldness that Emily had never noticed before. "Sister Grace," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You can just call me Grace," the woman replied. "I think we've moved past formalities, haven't we?" "Where are the others?" Nathan asked. "What, others?" Grace asked, smiling. "Did you really believe I would come here with an army, that I would fall into such an obvious trap?" Emily felt her heart race. Grace knew it was a trap. "We don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Of course you do," Grace replied, walking slowly through the nave of the church. "You know the FBI is outside. You know you're wearing microphones. You know this meeting is an attempt to arrest me. And you came anyway?" "I came because I want to talk to you, Emily. I want to explain some things before it's too late." "Explain?" "What?" Emily asked, her voice laden with anger. "Explain why you killed my mother." "Your mother was an imprudent woman," Grace replied. "She didn't understand the consequences of what she wanted to do. She wanted to do the right thing. She wanted to destroy everything we built," Grace corrected. "She wanted to expose operations that maintain the balance between good and evil. In this world, criminal operations," Nathan said. "Necessary operations," Grace replied. "Do you really believe the church maintains itself only with donations and Sunday collections? Do you believe the Vatican sustains its worldwide operations only with prayers?" Emily frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the money that finances schools, hospitals, orphanages around the world," Grace explained. "I'm talking about the resources that allow the church to help millions of needy people." "Money obtained through crimes," Nathan said. "Money obtained through methods that the naive prefer not to know," Grace corrected. "Do you think it's better to let millions of people die of hunger to keep your hands clean?" Emily looked at the woman who had been like a mother to her, trying to understand how someone who had taught about goodness and charity could justify murder and theft. "You're sick," she said. "I'm pragmatic," Grace replied. "I do what's necessary, for the greater good." "And my mother? Killing her was for the greater good." "Your mother was about to expose an operation that supports hundreds of charitable works," Grace explained. "She was about to cut off the funding that keeps children fed, the sick treated, orphans sheltered. Yes, killing her was for the greater good." Emily felt such intense anger that it almost blinded her. She took a step toward Grace, but Nathan held her back. "You're a monster," she said. "I am a servant of God," Grace replied, "and you are obstacles I need to remove." "Are you going to kill us too?" "I won't need to," Grace said, smiling. "You're going to kill yourselves." What are you talking about? Grace took a small box from inside her habit. When she opened it, Emily saw a relic she recognized immediately. It was a piece of the cross they had found in the crypt, but worked in a different way. "Recognize this?" Grace asked. "It's part of St. Jerome's cross," Emily replied. "Exactly. But this part was consecrated in a special way. This part kills those who have impure blood." "You're delusional." "Am I?" Grace asked, holding the relic. "Then why are you beginning to feel pain in your chest?" Emily looked down and saw there was a faint glow emanating from her blouse. The cross she had put in her pocket was reacting to the presence of Grace's relic. "Nathan," she murmured, feeling a familiar burning sensation begin in her chest. "I feel it too," he replied, his voice tense. "You both carry the blood of Francis Blackwood," Grace explained. "You're both descendants of a murderer. This relic will purify. You will cleanse the world of impure blood." The burning intensified and Emily fell to her knees. Nathan was also writhing in pain. "Stop this!" Emily shouted. "I can't stop it," Grace replied. "It will only stop when you die." Emily looked at Nathan, who was fighting against the pain, trying to reach Grace. She knew she needed to do something, but didn't know what. The pain was becoming unbearable. And then she remembered what had happened in the crypt. The dead priest had said that true love purified the blood, that two people truly loving each other could overcome the curse of impure blood. "Nathan," she shouted, "the love, remember the love." Nathan looked at her, understanding. Immediately, he crawled to her and took her hand. "I love you," he said, his voice hoarse with pain. "I love you too," Emily replied. The burning stopped abruptly. Emily looked at Grace, who was watching with an expression of shock. "Impossible," she murmured. "This can't be happening." "It is happening," Emily said, standing up slowly, "because you were wrong. Love isn't a weakness. It's the only thing that can defeat hate." "No!" Grace screamed, raising the relic higher. "You will die. You have to die!" But the relic wasn't working anymore. Emily and Nathan walked toward her and Grace backed away, clearly panicking. "You don't understand," she said. "You don't know what you're going to destroy." "We know exactly what we're going to destroy," Emily replied. "We're going to destroy a criminal organization that uses religion as an excuse to kill innocent people." "You're going to destroy the church," Grace screamed. "No," Nathan said. "We're going to save the church. We're going to free it from people like you." Grace looked around, searching for an exit. But the doors of the church opened, and FBI agents entered, weapons drawn. "Grace Marie Wilson," one of them shouted. "You're under arrest for homicide, criminal conspiracy, and money laundering." Grace looked at Emily one last time, and for a moment Emily saw not the cold criminal, but the woman who had cared for her during childhood. "I did everything for you," she said. "Everything to protect you." "You did everything to use me," Emily replied. "But that's over now." As the officers led Grace away in handcuffs, Emily leaned on Nathan, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. It was the end of a phase of her life, but also the beginning of another. "It's over," Nathan murmured in her ear. "No," Emily replied. "It's just beginning." John Peter approached them, his eyes shining with tears. "You did it," he said. "You brought justice for Isabella." "We brought justice for all the victims," Emily corrected, "but there's still a lot of work to do." "What kind of work?" "We have to return all the stolen relics to their places of origin," Emily explained. "We have to dismantle the entire criminal network. We have to ensure this never happens again." "And, are you going to do that alone?" "No," Nathan said, smiling. "We're going to do it together as a family." Emily looked at John Peter, the man who had been absent throughout her entire life, but who was now trying to make up for his mistakes. She still didn't know if she could forgive him completely, but she knew he deserved a chance. "All right," she said. "Let's do it together." When they left the church, Emily looked at the sky, which was clear and blue. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. Free from Grace's manipulation, free from the secrets of the past, free to choose her own destiny. And she knew exactly what she wanted to do with that freedom. She wanted to spend the rest of her life by Nathan's side, shining light on the dark corners of the world, bringing justice for those who couldn't do it for themselves. But first, she had something important to do. "Nathan," she said, stopping in front of the car. "What?" "Marry me." Nathan laughed, a laugh full of surprise and joy. "Are you proposing to me?" "I am," Emily replied, "because life is too short to wait for other people to make decisions for us." "In that case," Nathan said, kneeling right there on the sidewalk, "Emily Sullivan, will you marry me?" "Yes," she replied, laughing and crying at the same time. 1,000 times yes. When Nathan kissed her, Emily felt that her life had finally begun. Not the life that other people had planned for her, but the life she had chosen for herself. And it was a life worth living. 6 months later, Emily woke in the same bed where she had slept throughout her entire life. But everything was different. The house in Clearstone had been renovated and expanded. The walls now painted in light colors that let in more light. The backyard, which before was just a piece of land with some herbs, was now a flowering garden where she and Nathan spent the afternoons planning the future. She stretched in bed, feeling her body still tired but satisfied. The previous night had been long. They had finished cataloguing the last relics that would be returned to their churches of origin. It was meticulous work, requiring not only technical knowledge, but also an almost infinite patience to trace the origin of each piece. Nathan still slept beside her, his face relaxed, his hair disheveled. Emily smiled, remembering how different it was to wake up alone. Now every morning began with the certainty that there was someone beside her, someone who loved her not despite who she was, but exactly because of it. The wedding had taken place 3 months after Sister Grace's arrest. In a simple ceremony in the church of Clearstone, Emily had insisted on getting married in the same church where she had spent so many years of her life, as a way to redeem the place from the secrets and lies that had stained it. Father Richard, who had collaborated with the investigation and received only a suspension from his duties, had officiated the ceremony with tears in his eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Blackwood," Nathan murmured, opening his eyes and pulling her closer. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," Emily replied, kissing him lightly. "Did you sleep well?" "I did. I dreamed. We were on a beach in France, lying on the sand without a care in the world." Emily murmured, cuddling closer to his chest. "It sounds tempting, but we have work to do." "We always have work to do," Nathan complained, but he was smiling. "Sometimes I think you married me just to have a free assistant." "You discovered my secret plan," Emily laughed, "but you have to admit you're an excellent assistant." In the last 6 months, they had become a formidable team. Emily used her knowledge of restoration to authenticate the relics, while Nathan used his contacts in the world of antiquities to trace their origins. Together, they had identified more than 300 stolen pieces, some of which had been smuggled more than 100 years ago. "Today's the big day," Nathan said, sitting up in bed. "The last shipment goes to Rome." "I know," Emily replied, but there was a note of sadness in her voice. "It's going to be strange not having this project anymore." "It's going to be liberating," Nathan corrected. "Finally, we can focus on other things." "What other things?" Nathan smiled mysteriously. "You'll find out." After breakfast, they went to what used to be the sacristy of the church and had now become the operations center of the Isabella Blackwood Foundation, the organization that Emily and Nathan had created to coordinate the return of the stolen relics. The place was full of carefully packed boxes, each containing a piece that would soon return to its place of origin. John Peter was already there, supervising the work of the technicians who would do the transport. In the last few months, he had become a constant presence in Emily's life. It wasn't exactly a father-daughter relationship. There was too much lost time for that. But it was a deep friendship, based on mutual respect and joint work. "Good morning," he said when Emily and Nathan entered. "Everything's ready. The truck will arrive in an hour." "Great," Emily replied, walking among the boxes. "I still can't believe we did this." "We did it because you didn't give up," John Peter said. "Even when it seemed impossible, you kept fighting." Emily looked at him, this man who had been absent throughout her entire life. but who was now trying to make up for the lost years. She had learned to forgive him, not because